Hi, welcome back. Okay, now miraculously, Matthias has morphed into Matthijs, another Matt, but a slightly different one. So, Matt, the guy in the Cortana shirt here, what are you? Our enterprise, like, big shot guy, whatever? So,
yeah, I feel a little bit underdressed, to be honest. You guys all buttoned down and I'm in a t-shirt. I'm the enterprise guy.
Yeah.
So I'm in the enterprise developer marketing. So everything related to enterprise line of business apps, that's my interest.
Good. A warm welcome to the Jumpstart. So,
thank you for having me.
Through all this enterprise stuff.
Exactly. So let's get cranking, right?
All
and
right.
If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
All right.
So let's get started about Windows Phone 8.1 for their enterprise developer. So basically, I want to go through Windows Phone stuff, which I think is interesting for the enterprise developer. Most of the stuff will be the same as for all the Jumpstart content is reusable for the enterprise developer, but I want to highlight some stuff which I think is interesting for you guys. So the agenda for today is a little bit about the enterprise enhancements we did for Windows Phone 8.1, why you would consider building apps for the enterprise, talk about the converged developer platform, and then specifically about the authentication and security part of the platform. A little bit about the company portal, and in the end I have some things about how you can start distributing these enterprise line of business apps to your end users, and maybe some extra ideas or inspiration for you guys to start building. So we think that Windows Phone is even better for businesses. Oh yes, let me unpin this one. How do you do that? Oh.
There we go.
There it goes, yeah.
There you go, yeah.
So we think with Windows Phone 8.1, we have a great story for enterprises. We have a large choice of different devices. The experience between Windows and Windows Phone is great. That means that you don't have to teach your users how to use these devices multiple times. We have great built-in support for productivity, like Office 365, Exchange, Lync, if it's in the cloud or on-premise. We have a great converged developer platform. We talked about this already for 2 days, and there's another day tomorrow.
Yes.
And we probably can spend some more days if you want. And you can manage and secure it with your existing infrastructure, like Intune or maybe an MDM environment like Mobile Iron or AirWatch. All based on the Windows core and security architecture. This slide we show to enterprise all the time. It stands for choice and price range and consistency as well. So it doesn't matter if you buy the more affordable Lumia 520 or the larger screen Lumia 1520. You build your app, it will run on all the devices. What's interesting is that you can go from the price range up to, I think, around $100 nowadays for the most affordable device, and the apps will still run, especially in a corporate liable environment when the boss buys you the phone for a certain scenario in the field. This makes a really, really interesting case. All these devices are manageable by an MDM environment, Office is in there, there's navigation software in there. It's a great proposition for enterprises. So you guys can build, obviously, all this new and unique experience on top of the Windows and Windows Phone platform. One of the most popular applications, by the way, which people run for internally is like the People Finder or the address book kind of application.
Oh, so they can find out where their employees are.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like Intranet 1.0 all over again. I see that with a lot of scenarios. So that the most popular scenarios are around productivity, finding people, finding some information, getting customer data on the device. Obviously, when you bring corporate data on your device, security is important. So we will cover that in a bit. So let me show you a few sample enterprise applications. I have one on my phone. Yes. So one of the applications we use at Microsoft is the Campus Experience app. Let me log into that one. What this app does is, for one, we have a large campus. There's over 100 buildings. Obviously, this application only available for Microsoft employees. That's why I have to log in. When I want to go from one building to another building, I can order a shuttle. So let's order a shuttle. I'm in Redmond Town Center. I want to go to Studio E together with Andy. And I can now order a shuttle. And it will track the shuttle for me. Wait a little bit. And we'll zoom in. There's the car. And it said, well, it's going to take 3 minutes, 50 seconds before it's here. And I can track it. So while I'm waiting in the lobby, I know when the car will come. Let us cancel that, because otherwise the guy will be here for nothing. Another one would be a nice one, is a whiteboard snap. So I'm here in a meeting. We run a whiteboard. I can make a picture. Andy, it's you again. And I can immediately share to the people in the meeting I'm with. Really easy and convenient. Just small little things which makes life easier on campus. Another application I built in the past is in the Dutch office. We have a parking garage underneath the building. There's a limited amount of space for Microsofties, because we reserve space for visitors, obviously. Before you're in line in the parking garage and it's full, you have to back up, go to the overflow parking garage. You can use this app.
Those darned customers taking up our parking spaces.
Yeah, darn customers. So before you leave the highway, if you have to go to the other parking garage. Yeah. And they're now updating it with geofencing as well. And I don't know if we already pretty covered it in another session.
We did.
Geofencing. So you go off the highway, you get a toast notification, there's place or there's no place. Simple things like that. But it could also be a field engineering app. So I'm on the road, I have to do some kind of work. I have some jobs I have to do. Repair a TV or install a setup box, for example. This is the things I do, this is the stuff I need. I can finish the job, ask the customer for an autograph, submit it, and be gone. So simple things.
Simple things, but yeah, all good for enterprises, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all this infrastructure, and this part is a little bit about the infrastructure a developer needs for securely developing and deploying applications. This is the common architecture of Windows Phone. We start from the hardware. We start the bootloader only when it's signed. We're using UV firmware hardware. It's a standard. After the bootloader, we load.
That means that the bootloader can't be compromised.
Exactly. So if it's compromised, we won't load it.
Yeah.
The kernel is signed as well. We check those keys. Once the kernel is loaded, then we start loading the drivers and part of the OS. Everything needs to be signed. There's a user partition with the apps. All the apps run in a sandbox. And they can't get out of the sandbox. Application needs to be signed, either by you or by Microsoft. And we have secure connections to the cloud as well. So everything is just from the hardware up until the cloud is secured. If it's like the secure browsing environment with smart screen, we have BitLocker encryption for the device. So your corporate data is encrypted on the device. We can use IRM and SMIME to protect information leakage, and you can use it for email. And there's an API for you to use in your own application as well. So yeah, this is the things the enterprise care about, security. But I think we have one of the best security solutions in the market at the moment. With Windows Phone 8.1, we introduced a lot of enterprise features. There's much more device management capabilities, extra policies, things you can disable and enable. We can do much more configuration on the device. We can distribute certificates. And we covered that a little bit. You can distribute and update applications. You can configure VPN, SMIME, enterprise Wi-Fi. So all the basics an enterprise wants to, as an infrastructure for your applications, we now added to Windows Phone 8.1.
Yeah, things like the secure Wi-Fi, the VPN, and encrypted email, they've been big asks, haven't they?
Yes,
for enterprises.
yeah. So especially VPN was one of the biggest ones, so we covered that.
Cool, yeah.
So now let's switch to how are we going to build enterprise apps? So you're thinking, well, how do you build enterprise apps? It's going to be really, really different, right?
No, it's not. Well, it's more the deployment, isn't it? And you're going to talk.
Yeah, exactly. So building apps is just the same as a regular Windows Phone app. It's just using the same SDK. It's the same, but not quite. And we'll cover a little bit why I think it's a little different. Mobile is hot, and everybody wants to find the silver bullet to start building apps for the entire ecosystem. And is HTML5 the answer? Well, sometimes. So let's go over a little bit of the thinking you have to do before you start building apps for Windows or Windows Phone. So what are the typical scenarios you come by? And a lot of this stuff is already covered in other sessions, and I will cover a little bit in mine. So storing and synchronization data. So the next chapter will be about SQLite. Identity management. How do you authenticate and authorize people? You can still use push notifications. How do you integrate with cloud and your backend services securely? How do you integrate with your enterprise systems? How do you manage your device? How do you manage your applications? How do you manage your content? So it's distribute your apps, monitoring if they're still healthy. So the thing what I found when I talk to enterprise developers, it's that they are more interested in those kind of scenarios. They still want to use, I don't know, media APIs or do some smart stuff with XAML and make a great user experience.
Well, that cool video editing.
Exactly, but they have other concerns which might not be part of the considerations when you build just consumer apps, for example. And before you start building apps, we have things to consider. Okay, what is the form factor you need? Is it a small, cheap, or more affordable device? Do we want a bigger screen real estate for a scenario? Do we want to use natural user interface? Sometimes you want to use keyboard and mouse, so you have to use a tablet, for example. Do you need offline capabilities? What kind of sensor do you need? So sometimes building cross-platform apps makes sense to use HTML, and we support it with a great IE11 and WinJS support as well. But for a lot of scenarios, that doesn't make sense. So before we start choosing technology, these are the things and the thinking people have to do. Battery life might be important because sometimes you're on the road the entire day. You don't have the chance to charge your phone here all the time. Offline, if you're an engineer working with people at home and you don't have a data connection and you can't help the people, that doesn't make sense. So these are the considerations before you start choosing what kind of technology you use. So let's switch to authentication. So part of getting to the corporate data is through authentication. You have to know who are you really are, who you say you are, and do you have permissions to access the data. So we have some support for authentication, like basic authentication, NTLM. We can now use client certificates. Unfortunately,
that's new, isn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, no Kerberos authentication. That's something we get asked a lot. We can use single sign-on through VPN. So when you have a VPN connection, we can pick up the credentials from VPN and use that with Internet Explorer or your own app. Obviously, ADFS, OAuth, and all that stuff through the web authentication broker. We will cover that a little bit, and it was already covered in another session, but that is a part of the technology we have available now to start doing authentication. Azure Active Directory is an interesting one, and I have a little sample of how you would work with that. We just launched a library. It's called ADAL for Windows. It's coming for Windows Phone as well, which help you authenticate against different authentication providers. It would be Facebook, Google, Microsoft, at your own Active Directory as well. So with VPN support, we can now, we have two different kinds. It's destination triggered, so I go, for example, to my internet page and it will automatically set up your VPN. And we can have a per application VPN connection. That means whenever my application started, that tunnel will be created. All traffic will go through the tunnel. And when I use another application and needs another VPN, that tunnel will be created automatically as well. The per application VPN needs to be configured through an MDM environment. That's something you can't do manually. Out of the box, we support IPsec, IKV2, and we have several SSL VPN providers, which is a little download from the store. So think about Juniper, F5, things like that, and we're going to add more in the future. And when you configure it, you can choose if it's split or forced tunneling. So, for example, your application traffic will go over VPN, but the internet traffic will still go over your Wi-Fi or your data.
That's cool.
If you want to use single sign-on for your internet with IE or from your own application, you need to specify the enterprise authentication capability in your manifest. It's the same on Windows. When you want, for example, use your domain account, you have to specify it as well. So that's what we use as well. As I said, you can provision this through MDM. So the web authentication broker, and I know you already covered a little bit. I still want to come back to this because I think there's some scenarios you can do for an enterprise as well.
Yeah, we covered it at the end of the networking session briefly.
Yeah.
And then I did a demo that failed.
All right.
So, yeah,
well,
no, I got a 401 unauthorized. So I think maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. Twitter maybe bounced my account or something. It's like,
that could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have changed your password, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, let's go
So
through
anyway,
it.
I showed the code. I wasn't able to show it working.
Okay, so I have a little bit of code. That's the context. Many apps connect to popular online services, but it could also be your own service, Office 365 or your own Active Directory.
Yeah.
So I have a sample in a minute about connecting to my own directory. They all implement, or most of them implement OAuth, and the problem is it's a lot of work to create, right? So this is the flow normally. I have my online services, I have my application, I want to authorize, so I go there, it asks me for a login and password. If you're unlucky all the time, the user provides that. There's an authorization page. Do you allow this app to access this data, your photos, your emails or your documents? And if you say yes, there will be a token for your application. And after that, life's easy. You just pass the token with every request. Yeah. Simple OAuth flow. It took me a while to understand this stuff, but that's basically what happens all the time. Even it's Flickr, Twitter, Facebook, or any Active Directory for Azure directory. There are some problems, obviously. It's no single sign-on. The credentials are not isolated. It's inconsistent because every application can have another experience. And we have the difference with Windows and Windows Phone is that Windows phones are using low memory.
5 to 12 meg devices. Yeah.
Exactly.
They have to be supported.
During authentication, your app might be killed because we want to use the memory for mail sync, listening to audio, do some Bluetooth connection with your car kit, and I don't know. We do a lot of crazy stuff in the background, and we still manage to run some apps, which is pretty amazing, to be honest. It's quite impressive, but it's a different scenario than my 4 gig Windows 8 machine. So we have some stuff there done. So we can use Web Application Broker to authenticate against those systems. And it's a few lines of code, pretty easy to do. And compared to Windows, we did some optimizations for low memory situations. So, for example, we can use this for Facebook. You have the login screen from your app. You redirect to Facebook. It asks for your credentials and a consent UI, and it redirects you to your application when you're authenticated. Which is nice. You have all different apps. You can go through your Facebook application or your Facebook login. It makes sense, right? It's the same user experience. Why do we show this? But let's imagine it's not Facebook, but it's your own company app. So I have a company app running on my phone, which is installed automatically when I enroll in the MDM environment. This app connects through VPN to my backend. It could be an Active Directory, an Azure Active Directory, whatever I choose to authenticate against. And those apps can go through that app and do like this single sign-on.
So they all go through, obviously the Web Authentication Broker is a central component. They're all going through the same thing. Yeah, so you authenticate just the one time, and then all the others kind of inherit that authorization.
Yeah, and you can use the web authentication part, or for example, what you can do that's without web authentication brokers, what Facebook uses is the Facebook app itself. So the discussion comes up once in a while. So, okay, we have this nice web UI to log in, password, and get some token back. How do I really know for sure it's their page, or did somebody copy it and steal my login and password? So by using app-to-app communication with protocol handlers, for example, you can still connect to the app, authenticate, authorize, give back the token when you go back to the application. You have to build some infrastructure around that, but that's possible.
Okay.
And it's like one of the scenarios, I think, in enterprise, especially when you have a suite of applications, it makes sense. You can obviously, every application can build their own login logic, or you do it centrally. So just as an ID, what people might think of when start building this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So let me show you a little demo. And see if my web application broker doesn't return this kind of error. Here it is. So you will see a theme here. Most of my apps will have a button and a text box or a text label for the result. So
better than the UI I've had on a couple of my demos, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm a really lead enterprise app designer. But I think enterprise apps are mostly supposed to be ugly, right?
Yeah, they don't need to be pretty.
So just let's go through the app. What I do is now I log in against Office 365. Already mentioned during the presentation is that Web Application Broker helps you do a single sign-on. It can remember your login and password. It's the first time when you log in, it asks you to do that. I sign in.
So it's saving your username and password, and then
and it's
subsequent, it's putting it out there, and you can just click. And say,
exactly.
Yeah.
So and I don't have to do anything with it. For it, it will store it securely. I can't get to the credentials for my app, so it's really convenient for the user.
So the first time the user calls the web authentication broker, there's a checkbox, isn't there, on there that they have to check to say, remember me.
It gives you a pop-up like when you browse on Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
So, well, do you want to remember this password? Yes or no?
Yeah,
so
and that's functionality that's built into the broker UI.
Yeah. So what I just do, let me go through some of the code on the screen. So I'm doing all auth against Office 365, and I will show you the configuration on Azure in a little bit. So you have an URL which has an authority, which is this login windows.net common. My resource is outlook.office365.com. It could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, but it's Office. I configured a client ID and a redirect URL. This can be anything. I just have to catch it because that's what the page will set me back when it's done.
Yeah.
And Web Application Broker will catch it for you. So you build this really nice URL. There's a start URI and an end URI. And this is the line of code you have to do. It's pretty easy. Yeah. If you know how it works, obviously. But it's a few lines of code to get this thing started. You have to hook up the mechanism for callback in your app again, because we might terminate the app on the background, right? When we start doing this authentication, building a web page and doing all this great stuff.
So your app will be suspended and then could be terminated actually while you're
but then in the worst case scenario, that's happening. Yeah. So.
But you're going to be reactivated, and then we end up back in.
Yeah, so I'm back in the continue web authentication part with some results. I check if it's a success. If that's the case, I will add a parser token out of it. And you can imagine if we have like extra libraries, it will help you. There's now some helper functions I built. Every time I do a request, I add it to the token to the headers. And what I just do now is just a request to the Exchange Web Services to retrieve all emails with an attachment. And that's the result I show you on the page. So has attachments, is true, and select the subject, the sender, and the date time received. So let me run it again. Authenticate against Office 365. Wait a little bit, and there's the JSON or the OData context. There's a few emails here, which, well, it's a bit ugly, but they have attachments.
Yeah.
So we got a result against Office 365. Yay! So, and to show you a little bit, if you have an Office 365 instance, you can connect your Azure subscription to that directory. So this is Contoso. There's a lot of users here. There's applications. I have a demo application. It's a native client. And what I can here do is, obviously, there's a client ID. That's what I used in the URL.
So this is you're configuring here mobile apps running on phones and tablets.
Yes. So I can
configure against Office 365. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can configure plenty of applications here, and I'm just happy to use. Well, I create an application, and then what I can do, if I go to configuration, I can give permissions to to other applications. So it's like an abstraction layer. So I have.
Oh, so this is interesting. So this is this is.
So I gave read access to Office 365 Exchange Online, read users' email through this application. I gave read access to Active Directory. I can add more applications. For example, SharePoint Online is there as well, and give some other permissions. And I can add other applications as well.
Right.
So through this configuration, this client, I can access these kind of services automatically.
Yeah. So the first bit where you're getting a client ID, that sort of thing, that's kind of roughly equivalent to if you were using Twitter. If we go step back to the social and you go to dev.twitter.com and you get a client ID and a key that you have to, and that's what you specify. Yeah, so that's what you'd pass in the web authentication broker for a Twitter authentication.
Exactly.
So this is the equivalent.
Yeah, Azure Active Directory abstracts that away for you.
Yeah.
And you could even use Google, Twitter, and Facebook from here as well. So you can chain up a few things if you want.
All right.
Just a simple sample of the web application broker.
Nice.
And I'm glad it ran.
So am I. We've got one working.
So quick part about authentication, and you can go crazy if you want. So let's go to security. I showed you the nice diagram with all these layers we have, and there's a lot of stuff useful for us. And some stuff is already covered in other sessions, but just for repeating is, part of it is storing credentials. If you want to, for example, I showed you the app for the campus experience with a login and password, and it can automatically log me in. It stores my credentials, and we use the credential locker for that. So that's the same mechanism, that's the password vault, that's the same mechanism we are using for Internet Explorer, for email credentials, etc. It's a secure part in memory. And if you want, and if it's allowed by policies, we can roam those credentials over different devices, phones or Windows devices. Applications obviously can only access their own credentials and not other ones. And what we allow, for example, when we configure VPN, and those credentials are shared by, when Internet Explorer wants to connect to your backend system, we use those credentials as well. So that's how we get to them. We use the same mechanism as an application developer can use as well. And the code is really, really simple. You create a password vault and you store the credentials, and this is how you retrieve them as well. It's pretty straightforward. So I did leave a bit of sample, it just worked.
Yeah, no, yeah. We've covered this, yeah. So
excellent.
Yeah.
So with the Converge platform, we now support a lot of crypto and certificate APIs on Windows Phone. We got a lot of questions around this in the past. Windows 8 and 8.1 already support a lot of these APIs. We can do cryptos, we can install certificates, we can use certificates with calls, we can do certificate chain testing. A lot of banks wanted to build that, and in the past you needed a third-party library, but it's now basic in the platform. There are some differences. For example, in Windows 8 we can use the manifest to install, for example, a self-signed root certificate. That's not available on Windows Phone, but you can do it through code, and I have some samples for that as well. Yeah, and client certificate authentication. So, for example, you can now enroll certificates through MDM and use those to authenticate against your backend system. I have a little sample for that as well. So let's do a little crypto demo, right?
Yeah.
This is the really exciting stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know you want to know.
I love
right?
crypto.
I love crypto.
That's great.
Especially I have no clue what's happening, but
magic happens. Yeah.
I hope that's why my button was called first. Magic happens, and I renamed it. So
oh, really? Sorry.
This is going to be this same thing again. It's like a really well nice design. So first, hello. Jumpstart. By the way, did you know that you can now use the keyboard without doing page down or page up first?
Well, that's a funny thing, because I just came out with anybody who wants to know how to get rid of the keyboard, you got to go, and Matthias, he says, no, you just can type now in Windows Phone 8.1.
It's like awesome.
So I discovered that this morning. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So I gave the developer who built it a pat on the back, so thank you. So first we're doing hash, which is just, it's a little bit long, so it's just hashing, and I will show the code in a minute. Encryption, I encrypt it, and I can decrypt it as well. And if I encrypt blah, and I use another key to decrypt, you will see an error. So this basic stuff, and there's a lot of algorithms and different code parts you can use. Let's just show you a little bit how that worked. It's not that complicated. That's just to show you how much APIs we have now on the platform. So this is the hash part. There's different algorithms. It's MD5, SHA-1, 256, 384, 512. I'm happy to use now the SHA-512. I get my text. I pass it through this application, the algorithm name and the message, and this is the application. So I create a buffer to convert my string to a buffer. Create my algorithm provider by passing the algorithm name, so MD5 or SHA-512. And I hash the data. That's about it. I can do some base encoding, etc., etc. So all the stuff people care about when doing encryption and hashing and all that stuff is there. Yeah. Same for encryption. I have an encrypt function. This is the button. I call the text with a key. It creates an MD5 hash.
So
crypto
we had
buffer.
limited support for this in Windows Phone 8, and but now we've got the
It
full
was
WinRT
exactly.
cryptography.
So there was, especially around the certificates, which I come to in a minute. It's the crypto stuff is now comparable to Windows 8.
Yeah.
So if it's symmetric key algorithms, if it's asymmetric public-private key stuff, it's all there. So just pretty powerful for the developers to use, I think. So really, really simple sample. We just talked about this hashing, convert the buffer to whatever algorithm you want to use. Encrypting and decrypting is pretty much simple to do as well. You create a buffer, you create a symmetric key, and you use it to encrypt, and it's some base 64 output because it can be weird stuff.
So we can read it basically.
Yeah. What we also support on Windows Phone now is Virtual Smart Card. People might be familiar with it on Windows.
Yeah.
I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. It made me use Vista at that time. You connect to your backend network. It can be like TPM protected smart card. You enter your PIN code, and underneath it uses, for example, direct access because of this technology. We have Virtual Smart Card support as well. So it's a technology using the TPM chip, hardware-based two-factor authentication for your certificates. For example, for SMIME, if you want to sign or encrypt your emails, you can protect your certificates with smart cards. You have to enter a PIN code. There is a difference with Windows. With Windows Phone, we only support one virtual smart card, and on Windows, we have several ones. You need to build some kind of provision application to enroll a virtual smart card, but that's something, for example, Identity Manager could do, or other Identity Manager providers will build. And you can use that in your application as well to enable this. Another part of security, we can now install application on SD cards. The tools obviously support SD cards as well. But what we now do is we copy the application, including the data, on the SD card, and every application is part on the SD card is encrypted. So, and it's per device, and every application has their own single unique key. So if you remove the SD card, you cannot access the data. So as a company, you install your application on the SD card with your company data, you don't have to worry that people will access the data.
And the interesting thing about that is the app's storage area and everything to do with the app is encrypted, but the user could actually still store their music and their photos on the card, and those areas, those kind of public folders, if you like, that's not encrypted. So it's great for the user.
Yes, exactly. So it's still removable media for photos and
users, once they move an app on, install it onto the SD card, they can move it back again to the phone storage just whenever they want.
You can't just remove the SD card, put in another phone, and use the app on that phone.
No,
it's a per device, per application unique thing. So it's important. A company obviously can disable the SD card. They can't encrypt it like BitLocker encryption. The hard part is, well, you still want to have a removable device for your photos and your documents. So we didn't do it, but you can disable it if you want through an MDM policy.
Through MDM, yeah.
So I have a little demo for certificates. So what I did, I built a little application and servers, REST and adjacent servers. So let me exit and hopefully I can connect to it. Otherwise it will be... So this service is protected by a client certificate. And when I go to the browser, it asks me for a few certificates I've installed. This one is the one I want to use. And it responds with your requested product is 2. So if you see the URL, it's an XML service, and I can do 3 as well. This works. And if I do JSON, it's a JSON call.
So what's happening here is the back-end service, it's HTTPS anyway. So usually when you go to an HTTPS site, all we've got is the server it has a certificate that it presents to the client, and you get this thing in a regular browser when you're shopping or something. You get the green and say, the server's got a good certificate. So this is now extending that to mutual authentication, where not only the server presents a certificate, which the client checks, but now the server's saying, hey, I need one from you too. So the client has to send a valid certificate back.
Exactly. So I'm now proving that it works in regular Internet Explorer for my desktop, and I have the certificates installed in a store, and the certificate stain is my self-signed certificate. And the reason why I'm showing that is because on my desktop, I trusted this CA, so my certificate authority,
Yeah.
with the server certificate.
So they're the ones who issue the certificates.
Yeah,
You're
and
trusting
I
them.
created them myself. So,
yeah.
and you can install them in your trust. On the phone, I didn't do that yet. So you will see my call will fail because it doesn't trust
So
the.
is this what we call a self-signed certificate?
Yeah, it's
You've created your own CA. So,
Yeah.
so normally the ones that on the big internet for shopping, and that's the CAs.
They need to be public, and,
They're
it would be,
public
yeah.
CAs,
And on the phone and on Windows, we have a list of trusted CAs,
Yeah.
and we have this concept as a revocation list. So once in a while, the phone will check on internet for which one of the certificates do I need to revoke. Sometimes a company is compromised, revoke those certificates, and you don't trust certificates signed by that certificate anymore. So that system is the same on phone as on Windows. So let me go to the application. So my self-signed certificates are not trusted on this phone. So I have a few pieces of code. No, there's no certificates installed. I have a client certificate I can install through code. I will just do that for now. So you'll see it's listed now, and I will call it JSON service. Let me go through the JSON calling the JSON service first, and you see what's it will fail now. So the parameter is 1, 2, 3. I have this URL, and it's now instead of XML, it's calling JSON. It's the HTTPS one again. I want to find a certificate in my certificate store to use. And remember, I show you a little bit of code of how to install it yourself, but this can be provisioned through MDM. So imagine this custom app provisioned through MDM, including the client certificates I can use to authenticate to my backend.
So the client certificate is in a private certificate store for that app?
Yes.
Yeah.
I now want to query my certificate store, and I gave it a friendly name. You can query on issuer, on other things. So just a query on my store. This is what I call here. It's in find all sync on my certificate stores. It should have find one. More than one is a little bit weird. And I will retrieve it, and you can see now I have my certificate here. It's the client. It's signed by the test CA I used in the browser as well. Yeah. The subject is this. This is the one I showed on the list as well. Yeah. What I need, and we covered the HTTP client already, is that I have now the base protocol filter I can use to add credentials or filters, what I want. Yeah. So what I do now is I will add the certificate to this filter and start an HTTP client. You see that I'm now ignoring the ignorable server certificate errors. I will uncomment it later on and make sure that it works, but I'm expecting now the application to fail because I don't trust this root CA.
So what's happening here, you're sending a cert to the server,
yes,
but the server is sending a server cert, which is signed by this AdventureWorks CA.
Yes.
But because the phone doesn't trust AdventureWorks, even though it's got a client cert issued by it, then it's going to say, I can't talk to you.
It could be a man-in-the-middle attack, right?
Yeah,
that's what it's simulating now. So I do a response. I have to wait a little bit. I will get an exception, and the exception will be 72FOD.
Oh, that old thing.
Yeah, that old thing. Yeah. Which is it means that it doesn't trust this certificate. If you look it up, I don't know why we call it OX800072, but if you Bing it,
that's what it is.
You will find this the untrusted part. Yeah. So let me fix that first, and I can do two things, right? I can install this root and trust it on the phone, or I can just ignore all the errors during development, which is. Don't do this in production.
No. We shouldn't really have properties like that, should we?
Well, it is useful when you start building it, right?
Yeah.
So let me call it again. And now I find my certificate again. I ignore the certificate errors. And here I now.
You've got your response.
I got my response. You requested product 1, 2, 3.
Cool.
So I can use client certificates. If you want to list certificates installed on the phone, normally I will only see my own certificates. It's all done by the application, installed by the application. I will see those. What I can do is change the manifest. Capabilities. And you have to specify access to shared use certificates. This is something you can only use for side-loaded applications. And we will talk about that in a little bit, but the store applications cannot use this capability.
Yeah, apps you distribute through the normal process by submitting them to us for verification and then distribution. That you can't use.
Same goes, by the way, for the enterprise authentication. That's not available for store apps either.
All right. Okay.
But since a lot of enterprise applications will never go through the store, that's okay.
Yeah.
So listing certificates is just going, okay, give me all the certificate stores, find all. You can do queries if you want and specify it as well. And now I have to install a sample here. Let me just get rid of this one. So this was the button I called when installing the client certificate app. I have it as part of my project, which it depends how you want to install an app in a client cert, right? Could do MDM. You can authenticate against the backend where it creates your cert, you downloaded it and start using it from then on. And you have a single sign-on, for example. It depends on the scenario. I will just access the file, load it in a buffer, and I read it to my, it's a base 64 string. And then I call the certificate enrollment manager .user certificate enrollment manager .import pfx data async, which is an interesting name. The certificate, the password, if it's exportable or not, etc. This is just a friendly name. Yeah. This will install the certificate in my store. The same as like double clicking on the file on Windows and say install. The code is the same for Windows and Windows Phone now. Yeah. And it makes the magic happen.
That's great. It's cool. We didn't have any support for client certs in Windows Phone 8.
No. So there was a trick.
In fact, there wasn't even any for service root certs, server certs. There was no way of programmatically installing them. The only way was exposing it on a protected website and then tapping on it, or you could send it by email.
Yeah, exactly. And you couldn't get rid of it there at all because it was once it was installed, it was there, right?
Yeah, you had to reset the phone.
And there was some tricks to do, for example, Outlook Web Access or Exchange Sync with the client cert. But if you have like a couple of them, you couldn't choose which one you want to use. Yeah. So we have now, So now when I browse on my phone to a website, it asks me for the certificates installed on the phone as well. So
that's cool.
Yeah, we finally have this support. So we can do check for man-in-the-middle attack, certificate change, etc.
Cool.
So again, installing the certificates, this is this code. Just import the PFX, and you can also import the .0 files as well. So it depends on your scenario. This is another sample, for example, to add a trusted root certificate. I could have done this with the CA file, a CRO file for this adventure work CA, and then I didn't need to ignore the errors. So now switch, there was certificates and security. So a little bit about the company portal. First of all, you don't need to build a company portal to start building enterprise apps on Windows Phone.
So what is a company portal?
So it's just like the internet homepage. It could be something like that. So it's the homepage on your phone for your internal organization. Most of the times it's just a catalog of apps. Yeah. If you use an MDM provider like Mobile Iron, AirWatch, or Intune, they provide an app or a web page for you already. The thing is, you can build one yourself, and there's some interesting scenarios. So, for example, the authentication part we just talked about with this scenario, you could be part of that. Some IT news, you can use notifications on the app to make it more interesting and engaging for users when they're on the road. So there's some advantages building this kind of app, but you don't need one if you don't want to build one. That's just the thing. Yep. And it's just a Windows Phone app, right? So you can do all the magic you're used to on the platform. So I have a really nice animation, right? Oh.
Beautiful. Wow, you took a lot of time on that. Actually, I know you didn't make that slide.
I know. Don't ruin it, man.
Sorry.
So we have some APIs we can use from within this app. So you can list all the apps that you installed from this publisher yourself. You can add extra packages and install them by calling add package async and a URL to the path of the app or the AppX. The find apps is like listing all the apps published by this publisher, so you can make a list, for example, this is already installed, open up the app. So it's like building an application catalog. We did some improvements compared to Windows Phone 8. We could already enumerate and launch apps and install them. We can also get some more information. So you can enroll through the phone in one organization, but manually you can do it in multiple. We can list those. We can renew the enrollment, and we'll cover that a little bit. You can unenroll from an environment through the app as well, which is interesting. So people say, well, I don't want to be part of this anymore. My phone is locked down. I can't use my camera. I can't use my other apps anymore. So just get rid of this stuff. And please keep my personal data. We support it now as well.
All right.
Company portals must be SQLite apps. Can be SQLite 8.1, but cannot be WinRT apps to use these APIs.
All right.
What's interesting is, you can make a connection to other apps. If you use this URL, company portal, you can link to a company app.
Oh, this is the launch URI. So,
yeah. So if you have the company portal installed, it will automatically go to the application in that catalog, which is interesting. So you can share interesting company apps to this scenario. So now we build this great line of business app. And I want my users to start using it. So how do we get these things on the phone? There's a couple of ways. Through the store, obviously.
You can just submit it through the regular public store.
It's like what we did with Link or Skype or CRM.
So in that case, I guess obviously the first thing that anybody would see when they launch the app is a challenge for your credentials. So no harm in distributing it through the public store.
Exactly, but there's one catch: is Microsoft needs to be able to test your application, or you have to have a great demo mode, but you have to provide some test credentials for Microsoft to test.
So when you submit for testing, you can there's notes to testers you can put in there. So
that's the space, exactly, or some instructions how to test it, or work around, or whatever. You can use beta apps. They don't expire anymore. It's a bit cumbersome because you have to specify all the live IDs for people, and what you can't do is you can't remove apps. So you can't expire a beta and get rid of it.
No app management, really. No,
you have to have like how you say it? A kill switch. You need to build a kill switch in your app. You can publish them through store hidden and provide deep links to your customers, or you can do start side loading through an MDM environment or website or email. Let's get through it. So there's some differences. Enrollment is through MDM or a workplace app. You can do it through a browser. You can, if it's managed, only one environment. You can have multiple if you want unmanaged, mostly in a testing kind of environment. We have a lot of policies, so we can update and remove apps remotely if you do it the managed way. So there are differences between managed and unmanaged.
So managed phones are ones that the company kind of totally owns and issues to their workforce, and these phones are locked down by an MDM.
But it can be and bring your own as well, right? So I didn't buy my own because my manager got me one in the phone team. That's one of the lucky ones. But you can imagine that you have your own phone, but you want to reach your corporate email and connect to the internet, and then your company can say, well, that's okay, but you have to enroll and you have to abide by our policies, which prevent you from, example, saving documents or copy pasting. If you don't want it, that's okay, but you can't access those resources. So we won't touch your personal stuff, but we will have some policies on the phone which we think are necessary when you start building, bringing your own.
And obviously policies will enforce things like the complexity of the PIN code to access it.
So and after 3 wrong PIN codes, we wipe the device. If you unenroll the device, we only remove the corporate data. We can remote wipe the device as well, things like that. So if you don't want it, if it's bringing your own, that's good. It depends on the policies the company specifies. Public versus private. Public, you go through the Microsoft certificate process. If you don't want to do it, you want sideload apps, you are responsible for your own Q&A, quality and assurance and testing. You have to create an account for sideloading. So it needs to be a company account. Your publisher name is something you specify with Semantic. So Semantic, we are using Semantic where you can buy a code signing certificate for $300 a year. There's some information you need to copy over. The Semantic ID is pasted on the Semantic website. And at the end, what it will do is generate a certificate on your machine, which you can export and start using to sign your applications. So you have to have a process in place.
Every app has to be signed by somebody.
Yes.
You can't have completely...
We talked about security and a sandbox, and every application needs to be signed. We checked that. It's either through the signing process of Microsoft, when going to the store, or your own process.
Yeah, and in fact, even apps that you put on when you're in development in Visual Studio and you run an app on the emulator or on the phone, they're being signed.
Yes.
At the point that they're being signed by a temporary certificate just for dev work. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're always signed by somebody.
So what you need on the phone is an application enrollment token. It's this little XML file with a signed publisher ID, which we use to check if the application can be run. And you can distribute it through an MDM, or you can generate your own by using a tool which is installed with the SDK. And what happens then, every time you install an application, you sideload, we check if this publisher ID is available on the phone. This file, this token is valid for 12 months. And whenever you install an application, so we extract the publisher ID and we compare it to the publisher ID in the tokens on the phone. And if the token is valid and the publisher ID is the same, we allow this application to install. So this is the process. You sign the app, and you have the app with the signature. When you install through email or through MDM, the enterprise service will check if it's valid. And the signature is the same as we stored in the token. Runtime is interesting as well. Is we launch the app, we check, okay, is this publisher ID available in a token on the phone, and is the token still valid? So the token needs to be valid, and we can expire the token after 12 months, or we can revoke it as well, as Microsoft. How does it work? Every 24 hours, Microsoft, the phone phones home to the microservice, and we validate if the publisher ID is still valid. And if we fail after 7 times, so after 7 days, you cannot install a new application signed with that publisher or with that certificate anymore. We can still launch the app. So if you're like on a cruise ship for 2 weeks with a special line of business app, we can still run the app. And I think after 30, 31 days, then we stop running apps as well. So you need to have an online connection to validate that token at least once a month to keep your apps running.
Yep.
So what happens is what we send to Microsoft from the phone is a device ID, the different publisher IDs. You can have multiple publisher IDs on the tokens on the phone with the application IDs. That's it. We don't tell you what kind of names or what kind of applications are, just the IDs. And we will return your a status per publisher ID. It's valid or invalid. And once it's invalid, after that we won't start the application anymore because the token is invalid. And it's, for example, to prevent an illegal marketplace, for example.
Right. Yeah.
What do I say? Well, we sign the applications, or you do it yourself. There's scripts for it. This is a bit weird. We have scripts for SQLite 8.0 applications, and what it will do, it will also optimize the apps. It will sign it. We have a separate one for SQLite 8.1 apps. That's because we can use Windows runtime components in it, so it will extract those and sign it for you. And we have another script for store apps. So they're all there. You have to figure out which script to use when you start signing.
These all come with the SDKs.
Yes, they're all installed.
Have them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So enroll the phone through login and password. You will have a company portal where you can install apps from. You can do it manually. This is the UI you will see when you send it through email or through a website. You can install the token separately, and then you can install the app. It will ask you nicely, and it will install it. And there are some differences. So you have managed, you have to have an environment. Some MDM providers, by the way, provide it for free. They offer extra service on top of the MDM part, configuration part as an extra service. So this is the differences between one and the other.
Unmanaged is much more manual and...
it's mostly used in a smaller testing environment. So, for example, not be able to uninstall apps or unroll device, that's a blocker for a lot of companies. So most of them use some kind of MDM.
Full MDM, yeah.
So there's some considerations when you do side loading. When you want to use shared user certificates or enterprise authentication, you would need to use side loading. You can't go through the store. But if you have a store, or if you have the things which are not working where you do side loading apps is, for example, data synchronization. So you cover that, what you can sync your settings between different devices.
Or the data roaming, yeah.
The data roaming, that won't work for side loaded apps.
Okay.
And at the moment we cannot use the Windows notification service push notifications.
Okay.
You need to register your app in the store to get some secrets, because behind the application, the IDs change. So you can still use NPN, the old system, but not the Windows notification services.
Okay.
So you have to be aware of that. So a few other things. Part what we now understand support on Windows Phone 8.1 is the enterprise lockdown or assigned access. And what you can do is it's supported through an MDM environment. We can send a specific load of XML, payload of XML, which can configure your start screen, your application screen, and your settings screen. Which makes it interesting when you start deploying a custom-minded business app. So imagine I want to deploy this field engineering app. I want to configure VPN, certificates to authenticate, a mailbox, and some policies. I can't exit the store. I cannot develop or unlock and start sideloading apps. I cannot unenroll from MDM. I cannot factory reset my phone. This would be a perfect scenario for a field engineer with a specific phone just available for this scenario. So he can't sell it on eBay, or lose it and use it himself or his kids, right? So we have great capabilities now besides building applications on a phone for this kind of scenarios.
Cool. Yeah.
NFC support, and I know you covered already. For example, people want to use the phone to have building access.
Yeah.
Instead of the badge, which makes an interesting scenario.
Yeah.
This one is interesting. Just to give you some thoughts about what an enterprise app could be as well, is you can use the light sensor not only for adjusting the screen brightness, but there are some companies who use it for location purposes inside as well. There are lights in the building which pulse in a certain way. You won't see, but the sensor can detect, so it knows where it is because of the different pulses it can detect. So they use the light sensor to determine location in a building.
Interesting.
So it's not about an ordering system or a context or a CRM system all the time. And obviously we have Internet Explorer 11 on the device to build great web experiences cross-platform as well, because we support so many new standards now.
Yeah.
So all your HTML developers can go crazy now. I think that rounds up my enterprise talk for now.
Great.
I'm overtime, right? Yeah.
You're overtime.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right.
So I hope
join the club.
I didn't want to fall out of phone, right?
Right,
so we covered a lot, right? Most of it is it's the same as any apps, just different scenarios you can concentrate on.
Great. Thanks very much for coming in and giving us that. Thanks a lot.
All right.
So we're going to take a short break. We just got one short little session on SQLite, just to round things off for the afternoon. So we'll see you in just a few minutes. Hi there, welcome back. So this is the last session of our second day of the Jumpstart, if you're watching this live. If you're watching the recording, of course it's, well, whatever it is. We're going to just do a short session looking at how you program SQLite database on Windows Phone. This is kind of curious, if you like, because this is the only session of the whole thing where we aren't actually directly programming something that's in the SDK. This is a third-party package, SQLite, but it is becoming the database of choice for. It's widely used across a lot of platforms and becoming widely used on Windows platforms as well. So, talking about programming SQLite, first of all, when you're talking about SQLite, you need to ask the question: why do you need to use a database at all? And it's worth remembering this because people kind of think, "Oh, I must use a database for data storage," but sometimes just a flat file is just fine. You just serialize some JSON and store it in a file. You don't need complexity just for its own sake. But where you do need it is where you've got a complex data schema, where you've got a lot of collections of objects with relationships between them. sorry, I'll go back. So you've got lots of different tables where there might be hundreds of records, and there's lots of foreign keys so that you've got links between one table and another. One column, and a record in one table stores a reference to a record in a different table. You've got these relationships in there. That's the classical relational database arrangement of data. So this is where you've got numerous relationships and constraints. The other one is where you've got a very large amount of reference data. You've got a huge collection of data. That's a good case for a database, because one thing a database gives you is efficient keyed access. As long as you've got an index that you're searching on, it can very rapidly go into a huge number of records and go and pick out the records that you want to access. I mean, imagine a dictionary app. What do you do? You know, if you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of words stored in some kind of storage, well, you can't really load all those into memory and do searches in memory. You realistically, you want to have that stored in files and be able to do access. But you know, you can't do that in flat files. You can't have sort of one file for the A's and another file for the B's and C's and come up with any kind of sensible way of handling that situation. So again, that's a case where you might have maybe a small number of tables, but one of the tables might have a very, very large number of rows. So it's not feasible to have that in memory. So that's another scenario. So once you've decided you want a database, why in particular SQLite? Well, the main reason is actually with Windows Phone 8.1 for Windows runtime apps, we don't have a database. So this is where a third-party package becomes attractive. And this is the world's most popular database, widely used on loads of other platforms. It's very small, and it's an in-process database. So it's not like you've got some kind of database server thing running on the phone. It's actually private to the app, and it's just in process. It's embedded into the app, and it uses it. And it stores it into an ordinary file, so a storage file, which is situated in your local folder. It's not one you'd want to put in your roaming folder. That wouldn't make sense. This would be a local folder for your application's use on that particular device. And of course, it supports all the relational features: multiple tables, indices, triggers, and views. It's very reliable. It's got a large automated test suite, and it is open source. So all of the source, including all the test code, is all available. Anybody can download it and build it. And the other thing is, all transactions are ACID. This means that if the phone dies halfway through doing some updates on the database, your database won't get corrupted. So all transactions are transactional, are completed successfully. That's a crazy sentence. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It's been a long day. And it's run by this organization called SQLite.org. They have all the documentation is available on there about the SQL syntax for working it, and the C and C++ API reference. And this is where you get the source and load of tools. So what about using it within Visual Studio for building Windows Store apps for Windows or for Windows Phone? So there is, first of all, you need to get the extension SDK, which are all available for download from the Extensions and Tools Updates menu in Visual Studio, or you can go to SQLite.org, and in the downloads you can find the VSIX files, the .VSIX files, which are the Visual Studio, what does that stand for? Extension Extension SDK.
Visual Studio Extension.
Yeah, and you need to install that SDK, and as you can see on that graphic, there are well, actually, this is a bit of a lie. Okay, so I have had a bit of pain with this presentation, because actually the SQLite for Windows runtime, Windows Phone 8.1, is not official yet. So that version, Tim Hewer has published a blog, and he's done a kind of anybody can get the source. So he's actually packaged up a new extension SDK for Windows Phone 8.1. But it's not actually the kind of gold-plated official release yet. So I'm falling a bit foul with this presentation of the fact that we only released the SDK a few weeks ago at Build, at the time we're doing this live, which is right at the end of April. And so third-party packages and NuGet packages from other tool vendors and libraries such as JSON.NET and that sort of thing, they're all getting upgraded bit by bit. But we're still very early in the life cycle at the moment, so not everything is there yet. And this extension SDK for Windows Phone 8.1 is not quite there. And I did try and build this session around it, but as you'll see when I get to the demo, I had a bit of pain. So you'll have to cut me some slack here. But anyway, these SDKs all get installed down to into C program files, x86, Microsoft SDKs, Windows, or Windows Phone app. Windows Phone app is the new one for Windows runtime apps. V8.1, and so you can see the link at the bottom there. So yeah, SQLite for Windows Phone, which is version 8, SQLite for Windows Runtime, which is 8.0, SQLite for Windows Runtime and Windows 8.1, those are all official. The bottom one there, Windows Phone 8.1, soon will be, probably in a couple of, we're talking about a couple of weeks' time, but that isn't quite there yet. Now, I just didn't mention, actually these extension SDKs installs a DLL onto your system, which is a native DLL. These are native libraries, okay? So C++ devs can just program against these and use the C or the C++ API published by SQL.org directly against this. They can just go away and program directly against it. If you work with, well, it says .NET, but if you're basically a managed code developer, C# or VB, you need to use a wrapper to access that. You can't, it's a C++ API, so we need to have a wrapper. And there are loads of these things out there. It seems like everybody every week, a new one comes along. The one that's there are a couple that are very popular. SQLite-net, SQLite.net is a lightweight, it has a link to SQL-like syntax. So you're using link statements to interrogate table objects and getting objects out of them. But it's still working against the SQLite database as its persistent storage. So if you prefer a link syntax, you want to have a look at that. And that's used by a lot of people. If good old-fashioned, if you like, SQL statements are more to your preference, then there's a couple of wrappers. There's actually one called SQLite WinRT that was created by Peter Tor and shown at Build 2013. I've been working with him and supporting another wrapper called SQLite WinRT. And actually, I spent quite a lot of time last year talking about it. But since recently, a new one has come along called SQLite PCL, which is run by a group in Microsoft called MS OpenTech, who take third-party packages and that sort of thing and get them working, and they do great work. They brought out a new one called SQLite PCL, which kind of does the same thing, works with SQL statements, and in many ways is probably going to supersede the SQLite WinRT one that I've been supporting. So I'm going to concentrate on SQLite PCL for the rest of this talk, but like I said, you have to choose your wrapper, and there are different ways of working with SQLite. So anyway, installing one of these wrappers, SQLite.net or SQLite WinRT or SQLite PCL, they're all on NuGet. So first stage is in your project, you need to add a reference to the SQLite extension SDK. So that brings in the native DLL. That will require you in your configuration manager to change the target platform to x86 or ARM, because I'll show you this in a demo. It just complains, but this is because of the native components in there. Doesn't change anything when you come to submit it. That's all taken care of when you do the stall submission. But you do need to do this in Visual Studio. And then in NuGet, you go and find the package you want, the wrapper, and install that as well. And then you've finally got all the pieces. So here I'm using SQLite NuGet to get the SQLite PCL package. Right, so just a quick look at how you kind of do that. Now, I said there was some pain, and actually SQLite PCL is not available yet for Windows Phone 8.1. So bear with me, because I'm just going to show you how it works, because all of these steps are going to be the same, the code is the same, but what I'm actually going to build is a Windows Phone 8 Silverlight app. So
I have one question that's a little bit off to the side. Mm-hmm. If someone, a developer, wanted to get familiar with building SQLite databases that would run with Windows Phone, could they start up a Windows RT, Windows 8.1 application, build the SQLite?
Yes.
Are we anticipating that we're looking at the same kind of code convergence there that we see in lots of other?
Oh, totally. Actually, all the code, and funnily enough, my next demo is going to show you just that.
Okay.
I've got a SQLite being used in a Windows 8.1 head, which I could have created here, but I'm going to stick with this.
Okay.
And I've actually got a Windows Phone 8 Silverlight app that is sharing all of the same code through shared files. And later on, when I've got all the bits, I'm going to build out the Windows Phone 8.1 head. Right. So we're kind of not quite there yet. But anyway, in extensions and tools and extensions and updates, we go down. Here's everything that I've got installed already on this box. If we go down to SDKs, along a bunch of Bing Maps and Microsoft Advertising SDKs, you'll see I have got 4 flavors of SQLite. They might actually end up with being 5. I don't know whether they're going to end up with a specific one for Silverlight 8.1. So that one is Silverlight 8.0. This is Windows Runtime Store Apps 8.0. This is Windows Store Apps 8.1. And this one is the not quite official, but kind of have a play with it, one that Tim Hewer has built out for Windows Phone 8.1. But there's no point in me going with that one because I haven't got the wrapper that I need. So, you know, we're nearly there. But anyway, what I'm going to do is choose that's the one I'm going to install. I've installed the SDK, so that puts the DLL into the common area. So I can now add a reference to it. And this is where you go down to Windows Phone SDK, go to extensions, and there's my SQLite for Windows Phone, which is currently 3.8.4.2. Gets revved fairly regularly as they release updates with bug fixes or whatever to the SDK. Now, if you'll notice, I've got a little SQLite for Windows Phone reference here, but I've got a little yellow warning triangle. And this is because I need to go into my configuration manager and I just need to change. I can't have any CPU. It needs to be a bit more specific than that. So I'm going to choose x86. You could choose ARM. And that goes away, and that allows us to actually debug our app and run it on the emulator, which is an x86 build.
Right.
Right, okay, so, and then I need a wrapper. So let's go to NuGet. I need to go online to NuGet, and I'm going to find the SQLite PCL NuGet package, the portable class library for SQLite. This is the one that is published by Microsoft Open Technologies, Microsoft Open Tech. So it's actually got a bit more support than the one which I do on a best effort basis. I'm going to install it into the solution. This is the one that hasn't been updated yet for Windows Phone 8.1. It will be very soon, but we're not quite there yet. So there's a bit of information about it. You have to accept that you're cool with it. There's a license associated. It's installing loads of other packages as well. So now we've got, oh my goodness, that I wasn't expecting that. I think if I did, 3.8.43. Okay, this is they update NuGet packages, and they've just, this is interesting actually. You get this nice help page. So it actually tells you can go off and get the corresponding SQLite extension SDK. So I'm going to save that as, you need to save it as a .vzix. It comes down as a zip because otherwise it gets blocked. And then you need to change the extension. So I'm glad I showed you this because this is what happens when it gets updated. I wasn't planning on this actually. And then we can install it, which is going to install the new version. It's just bumped up a version. So now we've got 3.8.4.3. So that will go away in a second. We can remove that one. And that should be, we should be good. Go on. Let's go and play with me. Play with me. Oh. Right. Okay. I've got a problem here. Let's just add that one in again. Well, I'm not sure if this is going to work, to be honest. Because I got version problems. It's not a good advert for this, is it? So 3.8.4.3 should have just installed. So actually, if I go off to my C:, program files x86, let's go and have a look what's going on here. Bear with me. Microsoft SDKs. Windows Phone app is WinRT for 8.1. Windows Phone is extension SDKs, SQLite. Oh, right. Where did it put that?
Maybe in Silverlight, the Silverlight 8.1.
Oh, wow. That is odd.
Oh, is that Silverlight or is that Windows Phone?
Yeah, this is the that's the Tim Hewer one.
Right. No, I thought I saw an 8.1 in the Windows Phone folder.
In the Windows Phone.
I thought I saw an 8.1 option.
Yeah, but I didn't. Was that the one no, that's that because this is an 8.0.
Okay, I see.
So what happened to that VSIX? It didn't quite actually install at all what I was expecting. So that confused me. All right. So I'm going to junk this demo because the next one already works and has got all the right references in it. And I know you could watch me try and fix this, but there are some line. Yeah, thank you for that. Great. Yeah. So he loves doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Because really, actually, you saw the steps, and when your versions of the extension SDK and your NuGet package all align, it's pretty good. And that usually what happens on that help me page, you get the VSIX down. I think I remember reading something on that actually the reference is wrong. I think this is a whole system that's in some flux at the moment, as you can see, and it will all settle down very soon. So anyway, how do you program it when you get it installed? Well, okay. So first of all, what you need to know is that the SQLite PCL wrapper, and this is what I'm going to talk about. SQLite.net does this differently. You create your models and you annotate them, and you do a link to SQL kind of a bit more like the entity framework. So that's more of a, which is. It's a nice model. I love it actually.
Right.
But this is more close, really thin wrapper around the SQLite C API. So you're using SQL statements and parameterized queries and statements. Kind of a bit old school, really. But this is how a lot of people like to work with SQL. A lot of people like to work with SQLite like this. So this is how you would actually create a database. You create a new SQLite connection. You give the name of the file. This is going to be the container file, which is just a regular file, which is going to be the container for it. And then you cook up some SQL statements, which are just strings. Create table if not exists, and you're defining a table called customer that's got 4 columns in it, and this is SQL statement. And then you execute it, and the way you do that is you take your connection, and there's a prepare method on that, where you prepare the statement, the string, for execution. That gives you back a SQLite statement object, which you then execute with this rather weird method called step. It's always step. This is just the SQLite convention. So step is used not only for stepping through, if you do a query select star from customer and you get back a collection of rows, which makes sense to step through it, but even a statement like this that doesn't return any rows, you still call step. It's just the way it is. Insert, you make your statement up. Again, it's another SQL statement. This is what we call a parameterized statement. So you insert into customer, into the name, city, and contact columns, 3 values, and we've got anonymous parameters in here, which are represented by the question marks in the statement. And then you replace those question marks with the real values by using these bind methods. So you bind into the first question mark a variable called customer name. So customer name, customer city, and customer contact. You've got to imagine those are variables in your app that have got values in them. And you bind to the second question mark a value that's stored in a variable customer city. So you plug in the values into this, and then again you prepare that statement, you bind the values into it, and then you call step to execute it. Select, well, hey, yeah, no surprise. Select ID, name, city, and contact. Those are columns from the customer table where, and then got some kind of selection clause where the ID is equal to some value. And again, use statement.bind to supply that value. Then this is where step starts to make a bit more sense. So here we're only expecting one result back. So you can check for SQLite.result.done when it's actually finished and got you a result back. And then we can new it up into our own in-memory object that we can use in our code. And inside the, you see that customer equals new customer? This is how you read the values out of the result that you've been given back by SQLite. It's just you index into the statement. And so you see where we were selecting ID, name, city, and contact, that's statement 0, statement 1, statement 2, statement 3 in the result that you've got back. And you need to cast that to the correct type that you expect. Update, yeah, you update customer, set name equals variable, city equals variable, contact equals variable, where ID equals another variable. Again, 4 bind statements to plug in those values to complete that statement, then step to do the update. and to complete the CRUD operations, delete. Delete from customer where ID equals some variable, supply the key value, and then step to execute. I've got an interesting demo.
I'm already kind of curious that it's not a zero indexed. The binding isn't zero indexed.
Ah, yeah, that's kind
throws
of
me for a
weird.
loop.
Sorry, yeah. How long is it since you saw one based collections? Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's the way it is. Yeah. No, I don't think we need to save that. That was kind of tragic, a tragic demo. Okay, so this weird kind of solution I've actually got in here. I've got a universal app.
Woo!
Yeah, it's got a shared area, and I've got loads of code in there, including some view models, and we'll talk about these a lot in a moment. And app.xaml, which has got some code in here, which does some stuff with SQLite. It creates the database, and then we go off to this method, which is actually in another file here, create database, which is also shared, and this sort of thing, where all the logic is. So here's my statements to create a table called customer, another one called project, and we've got foreign key. So we've got foreign key and project on the customer ID value in here, which references back to the ID column in customer. So we've got some referential links there between two tables. And then we're just executing. So all this code builds my database. And then we've got a pragma, which I'll talk about in a moment, to enforce foreign key constraints. You have to do that. So this is a weird universal project, because you'll notice there is a Windows head, but there is no...
I was looking for it. I did not see it.
Well, actually, it's there. It's
I see.
actually there, but... I've
You've
temporarily removed it because it doesn't work. My intention was to show that, and this is what I wanted to show, was actually a universal app using SQLite. And I will, as soon as I have the bits, but I don't have the bits.
But this is interesting. So you could actually start building up your application, having removed the Windows Phone portion of the application, and then you can bring it back in later on using all of that shared code.
Exactly.
Now, I assume that inside that shared code, you can you still switch it from Windows to Windows Phone in terms of the contexts?
Well, yes. I mean, at the moment we're in the SQLite.demo.windows up here. But here's the thing. The other thing that's in this is a Silverlight, Windows Phone Silverlight 8 project.
Okay.
An old school Windows Phone app. So this is a Windows Phone app, but not an 8.1 one. But this has got, hey, look at this. It's got create database. See that blue square on it? And view models. So all of these are shared. This is actually all the same files up here. If you've never done this before, what you do is you kind of you say add existing item, and you go off to find a file. So what I did is I went up to the universal, to the shared folder, and I found that create database and selected it. And then if you just do add, it takes a copy of it. But if you do this, add as link, it adds a link to it. So you have one physical copy of the file, and it is shared between. This is how you might share code between a version 8, Silverlight 8 version of your app, which is exactly what I'm doing, and a universal project. This SQLite demo.shared actually is another way of doing add as link, but a more formalized and better, easier way of working with it. So it's ways complicated, but the point is all of this SQLite code is exactly the same. So I can run this on here, on here, and I've got a menu option to build my database and put some data into it. And then I can go off to another page, and this is and I can go off and find a project that's linked to it. I can go back and select a different one, Tailspin Toys, and that has a different collection of projects on it as one. And there's the details of the project, and we can edit it and this sort of thing. I can let's edit this. It's Windows Store app. For some reason. And then we can save it and go back. It's a Windows Store app, and that sort of thing. And it's being persisted in the database, and obviously it's persistent, so we can close the app, and then we can run it again, and all is good. in our demo, and the data will be there this time because it's stored in the database. And what was it, Tailspin Toys, and of course the projects. It's still a Windows Store app, so it's all been persisted away. Now the logic to do all this is all encapsulated in the view and view models. I'll leave you to study the way that works. But this is kind of an introduction to working with SQLite in a proper database. I do have the this guy, the Windows one is running as well. Debug start new instance of that. So this is exactly the same database handling code. So we have nothing at the moment, so we can reset data, and we've got some data. It's not particularly pretty, but there we go. And we've got some projects, none for that one, we've got one for there. So it's still exactly the same database handling code is working in both the Windows 8.1 and the Silverlight 8.0 app. Just a quick thing about transactions, relations, and other constraints. So any change that you make to SQLite database happens within a transaction. I said everything is ACID. It's I forget what that stands for, but it basically means interrupt it and no damage is done. Now, even if you don't explicitly declare a transaction, so you're only doing one statement, like I was doing with .step, it actually declares it automatically wraps it in a automatic transaction. But you can manually have a series of statements that you can say, I want all of these statements to execute or none of them. So I want these changes to be, persisted for all of them or not. And the way you do that is you execute a begin transaction statement. You then have a bunch of statements that modify the database, and then finally, when you're ready to commit all of those as a block, you can say commit transaction, and then you know that all of those changes will be applied at the same time. Or you can roll back transaction, and none of those intervening changes will have changed the database. So that's important, where you've got you've got changes to two different tables that need to be made together.
Right.
So relations between tables as well are interesting. So this is where you have a parent-child kind of relationship, and a customer owns a number of projects. And you saw a little bit in the way the table was made up. You actually have basically a project stores inside it the customer ID of its parent as an item,
right.
And then we have this relationship going on. And the way you define that in SQL is you define a table called, here we've got the table project statement, which has in it a column called customer ID, and that's where it stores the ID of its parent customer record, the key value for its parent customer record. So it allows you to do things like find all the, select star from project where customer ID is equal to 3 or whatever, and it will just bring back the corresponding records. And that relationship is defined by this foreign key constraint, which is that last bolded line on the screen where it says foreign key customer ID references customer ID. Now, the interesting thing about SQLite is that you can put those kind of constraints into your create table statements as long as you like, but they actually will make no difference whatsoever unless you remember to do this, which is to turn them on. They are actually disabled by default. SQLite's been around for so long that when they've added new features, they've often sort of said, well, foreign key constraints are pretty nice. Most people would say they're essential. They're a pretty nice thing, but they're kind of newfangled, so we're not going to turn it on. If you want it, you have to say, I want it, which means you actually execute this pragma. So you've got pragma foreign keys equals on, and that's just another statement that you execute. And actually, I think you saw that in that demo that I did it at the beginning of the demo.
Now, that has to be enabled at runtime all the time? Every time?
Just put it in your startup, your onloaded logic, just to say, turn it on. Yeah, so it's at runtime. So if it's not a persistent setting. There are a bunch of other constraints. Primary key, you kind of get that automatically on a create table. Unique enforces unique values. So every row in that particular column, you can say in this particular column, all the values have to be unique. Not null prevents null values being stored. And then check is you've got a little an external expression you evaluate on every insert that will be applied, that can block a insert if it fails the constraint. See the docs on SQLite.org for more details on all of those. The other weird thing about SQLite, or interesting if you like, is that actually you can store anything in any column. Yeah, I know. You can say create table project and have a customer ID that's integer and another name column that's varchar 100. But then you could come straight away and go insert into project a real value and a Boolean. And SQLite will go, really? You want me to do that? And all it does, and it'll say, it will try its best to convert what you give it into the appropriate format for the column type that you've declared. But if it can't do it, it just goes, okay, whatever. And so this feature is called type affinity. It's kind of weird. Basically, Elaine, the classical example, if you have a column of type integer and try and insert a string into that column, SQLite will kind of do an int.parse on it to try and turn it into an integer, and if it can't, it'll just store the string. Now, yeah, there's not many application usages for this, but it does allow you to have a kind of a sort of a almost a what was the thing in Visual Basic? You could have a type. Well, it's kind of dynamic. It's effectively a dynamic column, is what we're kind of talking about. Yeah. It's kind of weird, but just,
so that doesn't affect any of the other data in the column. It doesn't change the status of the column as an int column.
Yeah, it just allows you to do it. So yeah, it's and I have actually found a use for that. I can't remember what it was now, but there is a use for it. Sometimes this dynamic column type can be of use. But indices are created automatically for primary key columns, but indices are crucially important. If you have a database with 500,000 rows in it, and then you do, a table with 500,000 rows in it, and then you say, select me all the records from this table where some column is less than 40 or something. If you don't have an index on that column, the only way it can figure out which records match is to start with row 0 and read all the way through to 499,999 to figure out which ones match. Unless you put an index on it, then it can easily key in, find the ones it wants, bang, and it's really efficient.
I see.
Yeah, very important on foreign key columns, because that's the classical example where you are reading records out of a child table based on a parent ID value. Just a quick word on tools. You can download a command line tool from SQLite.org to read your database and get stuff out. However, most people like to work with a GUI. SQLite.org has a great list of them. I'm not going to recommend one or the other. There are a whole bunch of them. I tend to use SQLite Studio. I like that one, but there are a whole bunch of them that you can choose to find the one that works for you. These allow you to open a database and interrogate it and try queries out and look at the schema, and it's a very useful debugging tool. There is a catch for that. Oh, this is a useful debugging tool. The catch is, of course, that they don't work for a database that's on a phone.
Right.
So you need to transfer it from your emulator or from your emulator or from a real phone, and you need to do that using a tool of some kind. And at the moment, for Windows Phone 8.1, the tool we have is the Isolated Storage Explorer tool from the Windows Phone SDK, which comes with the SDK. And you run up a command prompt and you use a command similar to the one shown there, ictool.xc, take a snapshot. TS means take a copy of the local storage. XD means the emulator. You can use D for a real device. Then that long GUID there is the project GUID. You find that in your Apex manifest or in your WMAP manifest. You just run up the manifest editor, you can find it. And then for the TS, you need to put a folder on your PC where you want to copy all those files down onto. So that's the kind of syntax for copying stuff. There isn't a GUI that I know, unless you know. Have you heard of one for Windows Phone 8.1 yet?
No. My question for that was actually somewhere along the lines of, would there be, that you know of, and I'm speaking from ignorance here, a way to store that database on an SD card now that we have SD cards? Because if you did that, you could do it, you could eject it, and then you could use any of those normal tools to interrogate that database. For debugging purposes, at least. There needs to be a new slide in this deck. I hadn't thought of that one. Yeah, great idea. Yeah, that would work. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Now I could show you that, but actually I was just going to do what you showed on the slide there. So. No, of course.
So I think we'll kind of skip that one.
All right.
Which actually brings us to the end of the day's fun today. So I couldn't show you everything I really wanted to on that, but the app does share code between a Silverlight, a phone app, and the Windows 8.1 head. We'll as soon as all the bits are in place, which should be very, very soon, then we'll be able to extend that all up to Windows Phone 8.1 as well. That's it for us today. Could you please, we would ask of you, if you wouldn't mind, to fill in the survey and let us know how we're doing. Give us your feedback. We really would appreciate that. Matthias and myself are going to stay online for a little bit. If you've got any few questions, we'll be very happy to answer them. Thanks very much for staying with us, especially if you've been with us all the way through from yesterday morning. Yeah. Tomorrow, we've got some sessions just to wrap this up. We've got the tool session, which if you missed, and we're expecting that now, we do apologise. We're running over, so we're just going to bump that off and start with that tomorrow morning. And then we've got a session on... what have we got a session on?
We've got a session on Silverlight. We have a session on building universal applications.
Yeah, and the store.
And the store.
Yeah. So please join us tomorrow for the end of the Windows Phone 8.1 Jumpstart. Thanks very much.